everybody. This is Chris McCabe of e-commerce Chris with another suspension trend for Amazon sellers, Amazon brand owners. Something I've noticed in the policy enforcement teams at Amazon lately is they like to use your past against you if they've been warning you for things in the near term that have come up before. They are taking the time to go back into prior years, not just months, to point out, hey, we warned you maybe in February of 2023, and it looks like this is a problem again. We noticed for a long time they weren't really taking the time to go back through your account history and then use that against you when they deny an appeal. I've seen in a few different seller cases that I viewed lately that they were really willing to deep dive it back into almost 2022, 2021, which is 4 years ago now. They do their homework and they pick apart all the times they warned you for something that they think you did again recently. So a couple points on that. One, you can't change the past. You can't go back to 2022 and undo something you did, whether it was in malice or in ignorance. That is in the past. I understand that. What you can do is make sure that nothing you do now resembles what you did 3 years ago and got caught violating that policy, breaking that rule, punished. Some people I've noticed lately have been suspended previously for these things. And the best example would be product reviews, boosting their positive reviews on different ASINs. I understand that right now margins are thin and costs are rising and a sense of desperation is beginning to set in. It does not mean that you suddenly begin pushing product inserts that are going to dance around the policy of incentivizing reviews, giving discounts, giving product away in exchange for somebody leaving a review. Even if you don't mention leaving a review, offering giveaways and having it on an insert card, which is not quite the same or not as bad as having 5 stars across the top of the insert. I think most people don't do that anymore. Seems like only overseas sellers are still doing the basic mistakes that are getting themselves into trouble. But you have to be conscious of the fact that anything you've done in the past that you've had your wrist slapped for, been warned for. Some sellers I've talked to didn't even respond to the warning. It was so long ago. It was 3-4 years ago. Somebody at Amazon sent them a warning and never followed up on it. It could still matter. It doesn't mean that you're just off the hook for that previous offense, especially if you never countered it then. It means you never really defended yourself. You never disputed it and you never really answered for it. So you are still on the hook for your past violations and your past account history. I think a lot of people put these things out of sight, out of mind. And if months or even a year goes by, they assume it had no effect because it's not impacting their account health. Well, what I've been seeing lately is completely aside from their account health rating. It's somebody going back through their history and identifying all the times, sometimes 3 or 4, that they've been warned for certain behaviors. If there's even a hint that you're redoing any of those violations or that some of those behaviors are back and that you think you're going to dispute it and dispute your past history, you're going to be out of luck. Stop doing those things now before you get another flag or another warning. Another troubling trend I've seen lately is people talking to other sellers. I'm not sure if they're just networking with them at events. I know there's a large conference or event in Europe where a bunch of sellers were saying, hey, we haven't seen much enforcement around reviews abuse or positive review inflation for a while. So we started doing a couple of new tricks, and it's a hack they picked up at a conference. I mean, that assumes that how everything is today will stay that way in perpetuity and that no one will ever comb through your account history and find something that you're warned for now when they review or investigate you for something a year from now. They will do that. They have the right to do it. They reserve the right to do it. And I consistently see them doing it when they're properly motivated. So sure, some account investigators or seller performance or policy enforcement teams are on the lazier side and they won't take the time to go through and find out if what they're warning you for today is something they hit you for before. But even beyond that, I'm thinking of people who've been warned more than twice. So you're definitely a reoffender when you've been doing it 3 times, or if you go back to doing it now. Just because a group of sellers you had a drink with tell you that they got away with something and none of them got suspended that's locked in time for that time and place, and that's not today. That could change on a dime, and it could change overnight. And on top of that, enforcement has always been extremely inconsistent and selective on Amazon, which means it's not always fair. It's going to be unfair anytime it's this inconsistent. So that means you could be doing something exactly similar to what somebody else is doing and get punished, and they never get punished. And there will never be anyone at Amazon that comes out and explains why you get punished for the exact same offense that they were let go on. They'll just say, well, we looked at the account history that you have and the account history that they have, and we looked at all the various factors that we can't tell you about for proprietary reasons, and we decided that you deserve punishment and that person didn't. Or if it's somebody who doesn't even work on policy enforcement teams, they might come back and say, you know what, I'm not even sure why you were suspended and they weren't, but that happens sometimes. We all know that this is kind of a unclear game that we're playing, and you just have to roll with it and get your account back up. And they're not really going to care if you're comparing your situation to some other seller, even if it's a seller in your same category, or it's a seller who sells about as much as you do, like the size of their account, or a seller who's been selling as long as you have. None of this is really relevant in the process when you're comparing yourself to somebody else. Most people at Amazon will just tell you, well, I guess we should have suspended both of you. They're not going to suddenly let you off the hook because you're either breaking the rules or you're not. And you're either following their interpretation of the rules or you're not, which is another point about events and networking conferences people go to with networking components where they're having these casual conversations. You have to make sure that you're not overly charitably interpreting Amazon policies to suit your needs. They care about interpreting their policies to suit their own needs because that's what they've decided adds up to adequate marketplace protection, protecting buyers, protecting brands who play by the rules from sellers who don't. So you can't just be ultra forgiving with your own view of a policy violation and dispute it on that basis if Amazon's going to come back and say, well, actually, you're not interpreting the policy properly. You might have heard this gimmick at a conference or at an event. That's not how this works. Those aren't necessarily authorities on that topic just because you think they're an authority or just because somebody told you they're an authority. This is one of my biggest beefs with the events or conference space is that many times people, for whatever reason, wind up on a stage or are given a platform or a microphone to speak as if they're an expert on a particular topic, and everyone in that crowd will waive their interest in fact-checking or double-checking the information, and they'll just assume that that person is saying something that's compliant, something that's consistent with Amazon's enforcement team approach, or something that's frankly going to be allowed either any longer if it ever had been, or will it even be allowed in the future? Is that loophole, if it is a loophole, being closed? In most cases, the answer is you're only hurting yourself by blindly accepting and believing what you're seeing coming at you for content, which is why it behooves anyone. This goes for me too, as the owner of the Seller Velocity Conference. It's a big responsibility and a burden for anyone who's putting that person on stage or putting them next to you in a networking event to make sure those people are compliant with Amazon policies and procedures and also up on enforcement trends. As always, you cannot be a brand owner with blinders on, looking straight ahead, not looking to your left or your right, and not aware of what's going on, not just in the broader community of this or that LinkedIn post. Some of that's factual, some of it's less factual, and some of it's accurate and some isn't. But you have to be aware of what Amazon's doing out in the world and with other sellers. Play with that at your peril. Any questions on this? Find me at chris@ecommercechris.com. Shoot me an email, and I'll reply back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.